Ready for 10 juicy details about Jenny and Damien's passionate love affair on Gossip Girl? The show had its fair share of scandalous relationships, but one that often flies under the radar in terms of sheer drama and complexity is the tumultuous fling between Jenny Humphrey and Damien Dalgard. Their romance wasn't about love, it was about manipulation, power plays, and plenty of jaw-dropping moments. While they were far from a conventional couple, Jenny and Damien kept fans on the edge of their seats during their short but unforgettable time together. Here are 10 juicy details about their scandalous relationship. First, their questionable age gap. Did the age gap between Jenny and Damien rub you the wrong way on Gossip Girl? If so, you're not alone. The age gap wasn't that wide, but it was still enough to make some viewers of the show uncomfortable. It's widely assumed that Damien was either the same age as Serena or a year older than her since they met at boarding school. And Serena was 2 years older than Jenny. That means that when Jenny was 16, Damien was around 19 years old. Many people would argue that this is a totally normal age gap for young people who are dating. Others feel like the age gap between them was far more problematic since Damien was taking part in inappropriately adult activities. He dabbled in behavior meant for people who are well beyond their college years, which made him seem like a dangerous partner for someone as impressionable as teenage Jenny. Damien's character was built around the notion of privilege and corruption, and it was clear that he had a lot of baggage. As Jenny became more involved with Damien, she learned about his darker side, which included some of the dangerous situations he had been in. Still, she wanted to stay by his side, perhaps even more intrigued by his chaotic lifestyle without any concern for their difference in age or life experience. Second, Damien secretly wanted Serena more than he wanted Jenny. The way Damien treated Jenny in comparison to Serena van der Woodsen should be studied. There was a night and day difference between his treatment of Jenny and his treatment of Serena, but why exactly did that happen? It's obvious that Damien treated Serena better than he treated Jenny. He was attracted to both blondes, so why did Serena get to see gentleman-style energy from him while Jenny didn't? The reason for this is that he thought he'd be properly rewarded for treating Serena well. He was convinced that his gentlemanlike behavior would guarantee him a night of hot and steamy action with Serena. His memory of Serena from their boarding school days was full of crazy party nights when she was embracing her sexuality, getting wild, and acting totally physically liberated. Gossip Girl fans saw a flashback scene of Serena from her boarding school days, and it was obvious that she craved a good party. She loved to dance, she loved to get down with her friends, and she loved to be the center of attention. Damien was unaware that Serena had matured and become a more respectable young woman after leaving boarding school. His perception was that she'd still be down for a sexy hookup, no strings attached. Jenny, in comparison, didn't go all the way with Damien even once during their time together. As we know, Jenny was a virgin the entire time she was dating Damien, and she wasn't exactly ready to swipe her V card just yet. In one scene, viewers saw Damien pressure Jenny to get intimate by letting her know hookups were a standard requirement for any girl who wanted to be his girlfriend. Ultimately, Jenny decided not to hook up with Damien, and that choice was to her own benefit since he obviously never had her best interest at heart. Damien didn't care to be sweet, gentle, and patient with Jenny because he wasn't sure if that behavior would lead to the tangible result of guaranteed bedroom action. Hilariously enough, Damien didn't get what he wanted from Serena either. Third, fans agreed Jenny should have swiped her V card with Damien instead of Chuck. Should Jenny have let Damien be the one to get in her pants instead of Chuck? Some die-hard Gossip Girl fans think so. Damien and Jenny's relationship was never smooth sailing. From trust issues to deceit, their romance was a roller coaster ride of emotions. Their relationship was one scandal after another, with Jenny's increasingly reckless decisions causing fans to question just how far she was willing to go for the love of a bad boy. Still, Jenny refrained from actually going all the way with him. However, would it have been better for Jenny if she did? Losing her virginity to Chuck ended up being one of the most heartbreaking decisions of her life. Chuck didn't care about her emotionally at all. Blair banished her from Manhattan, and her entire social circle negatively judged her for it. One Redditor chimed in to say, "Gossip Girl could have been so much better if Jenny lost her virginity to Damien instead of Chuck. The script could have been Damien gradually becoming a good guy and developing a better relationship with her so we could see her swipe her V card with him instead of Chuck." Whether you loved or hated seeing Jenny on Gossip Girl, losing her from the show was a definite loss. She knew how to bring the drama. If she hadn't been banished from New York City by Blair, the show would have continued on a great track having her around. And all of that would have been possible if she slept with Damien instead of Chuck. Fourth, Damien butchered Jenny's chances of ever reconciling with Nate. Damien punched Nate in the face at an upscale New York event, and it was the kiss of death to any chance Jenny had of ever getting back together with Nate. Jenny's relationship with Damien didn't just affect her family life, it also damaged her friendships and future relationships. She had a strained relationship with Nate Archibald, and her growing involvement with Damien only worsened things. Nate, who had always seen Jenny as a girl he cared about, couldn't condone Jenny's choices and became more critical of her behavior. The fallout from Jenny's relationship with Damien further isolated her from the people who once had her back. When Nate showed up to try and stop Jenny from going off and making dire mistakes with Damien, Damien responded by punching Nate in the face. Although there was an off-and-on vibe going on between Nate and Jenny, this canon event sort of put an end to that completely. Anyone who was holding their breath with hopes that Jenny and Nate would be endgame someday had to release the idea of that completely. Jenny allowed her sleazy boyfriend to assault Nate in front of an entire room of noteworthy people. It was an embarrassing moment for everyone involved, and Jenny fully allowed it to happen. From that moment forward, it was safe to say Jenny was never going to have a chance to win Nate back over again. Fifth, Damien was Jenny's second taste of bad boy life. Keep in mind that the first bad boy Jenny faced off against before Damien was Chuck Bass. With Damien, Jenny was swept off her feet by his bad boy charm. She had long been trying to fit in with the Upper East Side's elite by the time she met him. Damien represented everything that Jenny thought she wanted: power, rebellion, and a certain thrill she didn't get from her former relationships. As she became more immersed in his world, it was clear that Damien had a dangerous edge, and Jenny's transition from good girl to someone dabbling in shady deals made for a compelling dynamic. But let's not forget that Jenny's first exposure to a bad boy was Chuck in the first episode of the show, far before Damien entered the scene. Since she was so young when she met Chuck, she ended up in a victim role more than anything else. By the time she met Damien, he became her second taste of experiencing a full-fledged bad boy in New York City. Chuck tried to force himself on Jenny at the Kiss on the Lips party, and Jenny wasn't into it. However, there's no denying that the excitement of Damien's energy was far more enticing for little J. Sixth, the way Damien compares to Jenny's other love interests. Jenny's relationship with Damien was toxic AF, but was it really the worst romantic interaction she had on the show? Let's dive in and compare her other love interests from episode 1 through the end. The first guy she officially dated was Asher Hornsby. Jenny was smitten with Asher when they first started dating. She met him while he was walking dogs in New York City, and she instantly thought he was cute. After she found out he was wealthy, it made her even more attracted to him and even more excited by the prospect of dating him. At that time, Jenny was doing her best to fit in with the popular girls at school. She knew having the right boyfriend on her arm would be a great status symbol. The reality is that Asher never really liked Jenny. He was never attracted to her because he was secretly gay the entire time they were dating. And what about her relationship with Nate? Things between Jenny and Nate were hot and cold the entire time they were in each other's lives. There was never anything consistent for them to lean on, and the foundation of their love story was always so shaky. During their good moments, they were on top of the world, but when things were bad, they were horrendous. In season 3, he was doing his best to try and make his relationship with Serena work. That's when Nate and Jenny's love story crumbled forever. Nate saw that Jenny was trying to backstab and sabotage Serena, so he'd be manipulated into dumping Serena. Nate yelled at her to get out in an episode called The Unbearable Lightness of Being, and they were done for good from that point forward. Lastly, Jenny had a one-night stand with Chuck where she swiped her V card, as we previously mentioned. She immediately lost access to the Upper East Side and all of her friends with that decision because it pissed Blair off so much. In our opinion, Jenny's connection with Damien was way worse than all of these. Seventh, Damien became Jenny's descent into a darker world. What started as a flirty romance soon became much darker for little J. Damien introduced Jenny to the world of illegal activity, including supplying fake IDs and selling addictive substances. As Jenny grew more entangled in Damien's world, her morals began to blur, and she became increasingly reckless. Damien's influence over her marked a shift in her character, leading to some of her most controversial decisions. The relationship pushed Jenny into darker territory than we had seen before. When Jenny became desperate to impress her ritzy friend group on the Upper East Side, she knew she needed cold, hard cash to keep up the facade. Gifting extremely expensive designer bags to her minions, is one example of Jenny using the income she earned with Damien to maintain her status as Queen Bee. Jenny's decision to do that shouldn't have been shocking to Gossip Girl viewers, by the way. Even before Damien came along, Jenny was making morally corrupt decisions like stealing Hazel's mother's dress, for example. Damien simply amplified Jenny's willingness to descend into darkness. Jenny's relationship with Damien was problematic for her family also, especially her father, Rufus. Rufus had always been protective of his daughter, and when he discovered Jenny was involved with someone like Damien, he became highly concerned. Jenny's behavior began to spiral as she ignored her father's warnings, which only pushed her further away from the family she had once been close to. Damien's presence in her life only fueled their issues. 8. Their messy and inevitable breakup. Like most relationships on Gossip Girl, Damien and Jenny's romance had an expiration date. The toxic dynamic that defined their time together eventually led to their breakup. Jenny realized that Damien was more of a liability than a partner, and his disregard for the consequences of his actions no longer seemed appealing. Their breakup was inevitable, especially as Jenny began to realize that the thrill of being with a bad boy came with too many consequences. 9th, it all started with a scandalous introduction. Damien was introduced as the charming yet morally dubious son of a wealthy businessman. His first major appearance on the show was in season 4, when he tried to manipulate Jenny into helping him get revenge on his father. His suave demeanor and dark side immediately made him an intriguing character, and he didn't waste time setting his sights on Jenny. Their first interaction was a meeting of equals in terms of rebellion, with both characters having one foot in the world of high society and the other in the grittier side of New York. When they first met, Jenny was annoyed with the task of showing him around the Big Apple until she looked up and laid eyes on him. Suddenly, in that moment, she was intrigued by him. 10th, Damien's selfish departure. After their breakup, Damien acted like he didn't care about Jenny's existence whatsoever. He left Jenny behind, but his impact on her was lasting. His influence may have been brief, but it significantly changed Jenny's character trajectory. By the end of her story arc, Jenny had come to terms with the damage caused by her entanglement with Damien, though she would always carry the scars of her rebellious choices. In the world of Gossip Girl, Jenny and Damien's relationship stood out as a whirlwind of drama, power, and self-destruction. From Jenny's transformation into someone willing to cross lines for love and ambition, to the toxic yet magnetic chemistry between the two, their romance was one of the darker storylines on the show. Their fling may have been short-lived, but it left a lasting mark on Jenny's character and added a layer of intrigue and suspense to the Gossip Girl narrative. What are your thoughts on the travesty of Jenny and Damien? Let us know in the comments section below.